When Jude says, "You're going to be okay," and Carden responds with, "That ought to be reassuring, but when mortals say it, it doesn't mean the same thing as when the folk do, does it? For you, it's an appeal, a kind of hopeful magic. You say, 'I will be well,' because you fear I won't be." And one, it's telling that, like, he knows mortals enough in their language to recognize that it's a hopeful, plea. It's a hopeful magic to hope that because they're afraid of it, but also recognizing Jude wouldn't be this nice to me if she wasn't afraid for my life, which is kind of flattering that she's afraid for my life. It's also interesting that she brings him back to her rooms, not his. It's as if she wants to squirrel him away and protect him, hide him away from the rest of the world. As I was rereading this line that Carden says, "Oh, how many times have I wished that you couldn't lie? Never more than now." So many times in the past I went, "Oh, that's cute," and just moved on. But now I'm stopped and frowned because I was like, what do you mean? How many times I have wished that you couldn't lie? Do you mean that, only because mortals can lie, that you wish that maybe she was fae? Then you can freely love her with less of a stigma than you loving a mortal? Are you saying that you wish that she couldn't lie because this extra layer, that mortals that could lie, they can manipulate their words for that extra layer that you don't know how to interpret it, but you know how to interpret the way that faes manipulate their words? So in this moment, you don't know if she genuinely is afraid that you're gonna die, or she's just placating you. When Jude asks Carden why did he let his mother into his court, if you stop to think about it, it's heartbreaking because it's showing that Carden, despite his words and actions, is a hopeful optimist. That despite people time and time again hurting him, he lets them back into his life. He might be bitter about it outwardly, but he lets them back in. Jude broke his trust a couple of different times, but he lets her back in and trusts her. His mother completely disregarded him unless it was beneficial to her, but yet he lets her back in. And his father, the amount of times he tried to gain his love and attention, the amount of different ways he just tried to get his attention, but failed. Yes, he was bitter about it, but that night of the coronation, he was drunk because the minute his time was up, his father was about to die without once acknowledging him. Once again, we're seeing Jude and Carden kind of cross over this hurdle, and usually it happens after some extreme emotion or something, like a question of mortality, like after the coronation in the first book. But here, Carden's life is on the line, and Jude for the first time is kind of opening up about herself, that she's revealing things, asking questions. And I don't think it would have happened if it hadn't been for the Undersea, if his life wasn't on the line, and if it wasn't that she felt like he understands her more than anyone else in her life, that she can't turn to Taryn or Vivi or Maddox or anyone else. Carden's the only one that she could say these things to, and he would fully comprehend and understand because he feels the same way. When Jude's going over the list of questions that she would have loved to have asked her mother, the final one is whether she actually murdered someone and hid her body in the burnt remains of Maddox's original stronghold. He looks surprised. I always forgot that part of the story, and I think that was intentional. The fairies probably don't want it well known that mortals can easily unalive one of their kind and set them up and deceive them that well. So of course that part of the story would be forgotten willfully. Carden's saying, "Why was I cruel to the folk? Why was I awful to you? Because I could be. Because I liked it. Because for a moment when I was at my worst, I felt powerful. And most of the time I felt powerless, despite being a prince and the son of a high king of fairy." And it's him saying that he liked it because he was trained to like it. Balkan praised me for being cruel. His friends respected him for being cruel and powerful. And the only reason why he got power is because he belittled others. And he wasn't born into this power. He had to work for this power, despite being the prince and the son of a high king. And did it make him happy? No. It made him still miserable, and he was still alone at the court, and it made Jude hate him. So was it worth it? Not in his opinion. Power is not worth it if that's what the cost it is to get. I love this little breadcrumb that Holly Black put in because, he froze up and she's looking at these matted leaves at the bottom of the bucket that she puts in front of him. She's like, I didn't know great fairies did that. It doesn't. It's because he's connected to the land. That is what happens because he is the High King of Fairy. She just hasn't realized that, or at least hasn't fully acknowledged it, refuses to acknowledge that this Carden sitting in front of her, the guy that she has kissed, the guy that she is falling in love with, is that powerful and that connected to the land. But yet we're seeing that Carden still hasn't fully leaned into and accepted his title. Yes, he did use it to help get Jude back from the Undersea, but he isn't accepting it yet. And we're seeing it when the Dom says he's the High King of Elfame. He has the strength of the land to draw on, but he's very weak already, and I don't think he knows how to do it. He has the capabilities of healing himself, but because he will not accept this title yet, he is not capable of doing it. But then we're watching Jude think it's her fault, that it's because she was doing the work for him, that, you know, she thinks back to when Cardan says, look at them all, your subjects. A shame not one knows who the true ruler is. And yes, it is partially her fault that, you know, she was doing the work and allowing him to blindly kind of like ignore this title, but it is his fault too. He is well aware, and he chose to ignore it, chose to let her do the work for him. This right here is so telling, but I don't think either one realizes it fully when, you know, Cardan takes the crown off and he goes, this can't pass to Oak if you lose it, although I'll admit the succession gets tricky if I die. She says, I already told you, you're not going to die, and I'm not going to take that crown. Here she's acknowledging that she actually thinks Cardan is a good enough ruler, that she doesn't want to take it from him to put on Oak's head just yet. She might change her mind, but in this moment, she thinks that he should stay the ruler. And simultaneously, Cardan's showing, don't worry about me, I'm on your side. I still think Oak should be the ruler. I don't want this crown. So I love Jude saying right now, I have lost my immunity. I'm as vulnerable to poison as Cardan is. Now, on one, it's kind of showing like her and Cardan on the same like even playing field, kind of. But the more important thing is that she has lost her immunity. Now, I previously equated that her taking her poisons is to symbolize that she is fully committed to being a part of this world of fairy. Because the moment that she started doing that was the moment that she was fully taking action in, you know, making her way into the world of fairy, that she was going to carve her own path into it, that she was no longer going to wait for someone to hand her an invitation. And her, like, to be a part of the world of fairy, there's so many moments where they're kind of equating that to be a part as a mortal, you kind of have to drown in it. You have to poison yourself. It's so intoxicating that you have to kind of kill your mortality to be a part of it. And she lost that immunity, meaning that she lost her ability to kind of see and understand fairy, to have her advantages, and that's why Balkan was able to deceive her and use her here. That's why Maddox is about to deceive them. And here we're getting a brief glimpse at the strange relationship that Balkan has with Cardan. It's very similar to Maddox's with Jude, because even though he has poisoned Cardan, he actually doesn't want to see him dead. That yes, he will let Jude poison herself, but only allow her one dose of antidote, and the rest for Cardan. He still wants a crown, but he doesn't want to see his brother unalived. And it's interesting because like Cardan equally doesn't want to see Balkan unalived, and it's almost hypocritical that Jude ends up unaliving him and has been campaigning to punish him because he has, you know, acted treasonously against the crown, and Cardan doesn't want to because it's its brother, but she does the same thing with Maddox. She should have stripped Maddox from his title for acting treasonously, but she doesn't because he is her father figure. And here we're getting a reminder that Jude is more like the Maddox than she likes to believe nowadays. That she did grow up at his knee. That when Balkan says, and you're just like him, willing to beg and grovel and lower yourself to anyone if it gets you power. And she's starting to realize that I did do that. I did let others punch me and hit me. And I took everything because it meant in the long run I would eventually get more power. Falsely believing yet again that if I just get a little bit more power, then I'll be safer. And then we get another instance where it reminds us that she is like Maddox, because as Balkan says, hold, I surrender, he is cut off because Jude has already stabbed him and killed him. Just like with Maddox, it is not just a game where they can stop. They fight to win, they fight to kill. And we see this also with Oak in The Stolen Heir, where like he openly talks about how he has learned from Maddox that it's not just a fun duel. When he fights to kill. And this is why I now think that Taryn has been involved in Maddox's scheme for so much longer, because on every other read, I assumed that he had asked her that very night to impersonate Jude to convince Cardan to release Maddox from his vow. But now I'm starting to think that she's been involved at least since she got Jude new clothes, because it'd be a lot harder to impersonate Jude when Jude wears the same two doublets. But now with more clothes, that means that she has a better chance of putting on any doublet and Cardan assuming is her. But the other thing is that Jude accidentally increased her chances at tricking Cardan because of the moon and star earrings that she gifted her, because the moon and star earrings makes them more beautiful to whoever looks at them, and we know from every other book Cardan could tell the difference between the twins. So wearing those earrings, when he looked at them, he assumed that was Jude because Jude is the more beautiful twin to him. So Cardan's back in his own room and Jude's in hers, and Cardan sends a servant to bring her to him. And the first interesting thing is that she doesn't prickle at that. She doesn't think it's weird that he is commanding her. In part, it's because she is spiraling because everything has fallen to shit. But also, he's not letting her, like the servant's not giving her a chance to change. She must come as she is. And I think it's because he's a little afraid of what just happening again with Taryn. He needs to ensure this is still Jude, the Jude that he knows and loves. And Carden, knowing Jude, after he just commanded her to come to him, the first thing he says to her is, please sit. He says, please, because I think he expected her to come in fuming, and he needed to get her off the defensive, assuming that. He assumed that would happen because it happened previously, you know, after the night of the Queen of Mirth, when he assumed his power and he commanded her. She turned around after they were alone and said, never do this again. And I think he expected that version of Jude, but that version is not there anymore. And we're seeing that she's actually afraid of him. She rarely does as he says. I think she's also recognizing that he is the High King. That yes, she has to remind herself that she can technically command him. She's afraid of what he might think of her when he finds out what she just did. And I think they've crossed that threshold and they're in this new strange spot in their relationship. This moment here also shows how much he respects Jude, that he has taken into consideration what he could do to get her to give him back his free will. And unlike Balkan, who assumes that he may command and glamour her, unlike Dane, who gave her half promises, he's giving her a lot. He recognizes that she doesn't just only want to be accepted in this world of fairy. She wants power, because she assumes that if she has power, she'll be safe. And so he offers himself, which in part is what he wants too, but like he offers himself, and by that, an extension of power, to be his queen, not his consort, his queen, to rule equally beside him, because he also recognizes that he can't do this alone. He needs her, and the only way to ensure that she will be by his side forever is to marry her. But also Carden, he is so smart. He's gonna fumble a little bit in the next step, but he's so smart because he realizes that they're literally in the midst of like a shitstorm. And the one way to fix some of it is to give Jude an equal voice to his. So then she can have a say over things, to be able to command with her own voice instead of her voice through his. And then Carden says, you thought I had nothing to bargain with. And Jude thinks, underestimating him is a problem I've had before and I fear I will have again. And it's sad that she underestimated Carden, because that is the one thing that everyone has done to her and Carden together. Everyone has underestimated the two of them, and they both prickle at the fact that everyone underestimates them, but yet it means that they can kind of slip the rug out from underneath others. Scene is also the coming to a head of the trust element, this idea that has been going on since the last book of Carden just desiring Jude to trust him, to bring him in on her schemes, to make him an equal alongside of her as he's trying to make her an equal alongside him. And he's saying, look what happened because you're not trusting me and commanding me. I was trying to show that you can trust me, and we ended up in this mess. And this probably wouldn't have happened if you had just trusted me. I love Carden saying, you attempted to make me do what you thought needed to be done, and if we disagreed, we could do nothing but manipulate each other. And it's him saying that, one, I want us to remove our masks. I want us to stop lying to one another and to stop manipulating each other with our words, trying to, do what fairies do, which is, twist our words to get what we want. I want us to trust one another. I want us to be equals. I want us to work alongside each other. And if we disagree, then we can discuss it, because we each have strengths that we're bringing to this table. And instead of fighting for, who's on top, who has more power, we can just be equals. And this is one of the moments that we're seeing Carden develop as a person, as a character, because Jude's trying to alleviate the tension of the situation by being like, well, you said that you enjoyed some of my commands. And he's like, all the more reason not to allow myself that luxury. He's saying, that was the old version of me. The old version of me played the figurehead of leader. I didn't have any say or decision making. I allowed others to do the decision making for me and in my name. And instead I reaped the benefits. But I also could then blame others when it didn't go the way I wanted. But if I'm going to achieve true happiness and true freedom, I need to take command of my own life and make my own actions and decisions. And when Carden said, marry me, become the queen of Elfheim, she thinks that it's, as though someone had told a particularly cruel joke with me as its target. It's as though someone looked into my heart and saw the most ridiculous, most childish desire there and used it against me. Because she has been raised ever since entering this world of fairy, ever since Arinia had entered her life, that should not reach too high, that what she has right now is more than what she deserves, and to never reach higher than what she has. And she kind of does a little inch by inch, but not that high. But deep down, she's always wanted to go that high, and now Carden's offering it to her, and it's too good to be true, so she doesn't trust it. Jude then thinks, the irony that it's Carden who insisted that I didn't belong in Fairy at all, offering me this, makes it all the more shocking. Because as I've said throughout this book and the last book, if you read between the lines, she's always kind of viewed Carden as the gatekeeper to this world. She didn't interact with the other royal families that much. Carden was the one person in power that had been a constant in her life, and she has seen it as he was the one preventing her from being accepted in this world. He had convinced her classmates to not accept her and to make fun of her. At least that's what she assumed. She assumed wrongly, but she had always seen him as the gatekeeper, preventing her from entering, and now he is opening the doors to her, and she doesn't know what to think of that. But then because Jude has been silent, staring in shock at him, he assumes wrongly that she's not answering because she doesn't want to be married to him, that she's not attracted to him, because that would be the first thing he thinks of. So he quickly tries to say, like, we don't have to be married forever. It could be political, you know, kings and queens are only, you could be married as long as they rule, which in our case won't be that long, because Oak will come in, because that's what you desire. You desire for Oak to come in, and you don't have to be married to me. We can just both be like power positions, because usually it's political. It doesn't have to be because of attraction if that is the thing holding you back, but like we all know that is not the thing. The thing that I love the most about this scene is that Jude still holds on so strongly to her misbelief. She assumes there has to be a trick to this, because any fairy bargain, there's a trick to it, especially if it's too good to be true. She has learned that the hard way. She has been told that time and time again growing up, that there's usually a trick involved in a fairy bargain. And so she assumes that, like, okay, what if I release you from your vow and you promise me a marriage, but the marriage will happen when the moon rises in the west and the tides flow backwards. It's never gonna happen. It's a trick. And he's like, no, it's not. So like, despite Carden asking her to trust him, showing time and time again, that little misbelief is still so like ingrained in her that she can't ignore that voice. By the way, I made this whole video about this a couple months ago, but I love this kind of wordplay, this callback that goes on, because in this moment Carden says, I cannot lie, I cannot deny you. And in the next chapter, when he banishes Jude to the mortal world, she yells back at him, deny it then, deny me. It's the I cannot deny you. And she is calling him out, calling him, being like, were you lying to me when you said that? Because deny me now then. By the way, I can't believe I didn't make a comment about this earlier, but I just saw the image. Remember earlier in the chapter, Jude talks about how he's dressed simply, that he's wearing just black trousers and a white shirt. And I think it's because he stripped himself of all his normal costumes, the costumes that he puts on to put on whatever performance he is doing in the moment, because he wants to stand before Jude, not as the cruel prince, not as the high king. This is him. This is Carden. And he is being truthful and honest and earnest and serious when he is offering her this proposal. Both Jude and I love the moment that Jude, like, Carden's just cracking jokes like, I had no idea this would be such a sacrifice for you. And like, I think it's in part because he's relieved, but Jude is too. It helps release this tension that's sitting inside her, that she flops back and she's relieved to see him cracking jokes, acting like his normal self. I love this little detail, because Jude's feeling like that she's shaking because of like trembling with hope and fear, but it's so momentous that they're surreal, especially here in Eldred's rooms. She's not recognizing this room as the current High King's room, Carden, because in this instance she's kind of forgetting that he is the High King and she's about to become the Queen, that this is just her and Carden exchanging vows. And then Jude thinks the exchange of rings is not a fairy ritual, and I am surprised by it. And it's showing that Carden not only took the time to learn more about mortals and the mortal marriages, but he's doing it to bring some comfort, some normalcy to Jude, to make this feel more real to her. I love this tiny detail too, because he kisses the scar of my palm. I still have his brother's blood under my fingernails, and it's kind of showing all that she has done to reach this point. She has unalived his eldest brother, his father figure, the blood still under her fingernails, and the scar on her hand is from that last deal that she had made with his other brother. All the things that she has done to reach this point. So I think Holly Black makes a note that Narcia is beside her mother and a shark. She has no tail today, her long legs covered in armor of a shell. Now for one, it could be symbolizing that I have a way of coming onto the land, that I am not trapped to just the sea. I can come there and destroy you, you know, but I think it's also her mother playing a role that she is almost defenseless, because with her tail she has autonomy, but she's sitting on a shark dependent on that a little bit. I love this little line, shows how well Jude knows Carter now, that even she, I think, doesn't recognize how well she knows Carter, because she says that he gives look to Orla with coldness that I know from experience comes from either fury or fear. Like, she knows him. Oh my god, I love this. I love this scene because we're seeing like Carden at his best. This is him taking on not only the role of the High King, but he's using his wiles, using his, you know, skill as a wordsmith, throwing back at Orla, holding his own, and it's just so impressive and hot. Once again, Jude is finding herself in the midst of a storm of power, and it's the exact same scene that she had found herself when she was returned from the Undersea, returned back to the land. There's Carden on one side, Orla on the other, all these powerful fays, and she suddenly felt powerless, and she feels that again. She literally says, I feel powerless, that she has no command over Carden. But she is married to him, but no one knows it. So is this a trick? Is this a trick that I was afraid was about to happen? I love Carden saying, if she's the one with whom he dueled, I am certain she would win. My brother supposed himself expert with the sword, a great exaggeration of his abilities. First off, he's complimenting Jude again. But second off, he's saying that it's not just his sword. He exaggerates everything. He exaggerates all his abilities, all that he can offer you. He lied to you pretty much because he is egotistical and entitled. But he ends up by also saying, but she's mine to punish or not as I see fit, as a reminder that Jude is mine. She is not yours to take. Meanwhile, Jude's just like having this internal debate, and you see that she is a little proud, a little bit like Maddox, because she doesn't like that he's talking about her as if she's not right there. She's sitting here thinking like, if we're equals, then bring me into this conversation. But yet the strategic part of herself recognizes that it's probably not a good thing to talk and bring attention on the fact that I unalived their ambassador. Burn from Carden, because like Orla's like, I offered you my daughter's hand in marriage, my most precious possession, that we would garner peace there. And he doesn't say anything for the longest time, then finally says, like you, I am not skilled at forgiveness. And it's a reminder that she had cheated on me. She had lost her opportunity by going after Locke instead, which it's interesting because he lets a lot of other people have second chances, which I think he would have given Narcia a second chance if Jude wasn't in the picture. Okay, not only is this hot watching Carden do this, but like point out that like, oh, I can, if you want to fight, we can fight and I'll win because there is land under your sea, and like pulls up an island. But it's also showing that he has truly accepted this new title, this new role, this, you know, he's no longer going to be a passenger. He is now the driver in the sea. He is dictating his life, and with it, he now has the full force of his power. Now, watching Carden do all this, Jude is starting to worry that he doesn't need her anymore. And that's why he shook his yoke of her, that maybe she would be discarded, which isn't the truth. He still needs her and he still desires her to be by his side to help guide him, but she's afraid that he doesn't anymore. And then Jude is truly tested because Carden turns to her and says, do you deny murdering Prince Balkan, ambassador to the Undersea, and the brother to the High King? And she has the chance to lie because she is immortal. Something that she had told Valmorin, the last seneschal, that we can lie. Something Maddox had suggested that she does, and she's, you know, scoffed off because she knows deep down the moment that she lies and it's continent, no one will trust her in this world, and she would not be able to truly like exist in it. So she tells the truth, and it burns her slightly in this instance. And in this instance, she is not trying to figure out what he's saying behind his words, not trying to uncover what he's laying out there for her to uncover, because she assumes the worst. She is blinded by her misbelief. She assumed that he would trick her, and this is the trick. Carden ends this chapter with him, you know, naming this new island that he has created, naming it Inzia, Isle of Ash. And I think it's to represent that this is his funeral pyre for his old self. He has torched it to ash, and he is now emerging like a phoenix as this new version, he hopes, this person with power, this High King of Elfame, someone that is in the driver's seat of his life. And because it's a legit copy, I do get annotations from Holly Black, and she puts here, since he was tricked at the end of the first book, it was only fitting that Jude was tricked at the end of the second. And I love it.